Hello, my dear friends. Let's start with Chapter 5, Learning and Education. How much money can I make? In today's world, that is the foremost question asked when trying to decide what one's job or profession should be and what one should study to get there. There is almost no consideration whether one likes that particular field or not. There is tremendous pressure from parents, family, teachers, student counselors, and others to study those subjects and undertake formal education in those fields that lead to high-paying jobs. A young student is usually unaware of where the potential for making more money is. As a result, he or she doesn't have much choice but to follow the guidance of the elders who are usually paying the bills and will not have it any other way. Let's talk about why is a rose not a rose? When I was in school in India, I hated studying biology. It is not that I found biology boring, but the really useless and boring part was that we had to memorize all the Latin names for plants. I can't remember what a rose flower is, but I could not, for the life of me, remember the Latin name for rose. And the few names I did memorize, I promptly forgot right after the exam. When I finished the 9th grade and did not have to study biology anymore, I was really happy. To this day, I still haven't figured out, and neither has anyone else given me a convincing explanation as to why we cannot just call a rose instead of using some other name that nobody understands and remembers anyway. If we are using English language for everything else, why use names from a dead language like Latin just for the plants? Let's talk about, was it 1456 or 1465? History was another one of those subjects that I found extremely boring while in school. Although I have studied lots of history on my own in my adult days and thoroughly enjoyed it. So, what made it so boring in school? Once again, we were tested on things that seemed so irrelevant and meaningless. Did a particular battle really take place in the year 1456 or was it 1465? I could never remember and it seemed so pointless. Does it really matter whether the correct date is 1456 or 1465? And what if the historian got the date wrong? After all, the historian was not around in the 15th century to be so certain about the date anyway. A majority of our time in formal school education is wasted in learning things that some people decades ago decided that we need to learn. They seem pointless and irrelevant to the student, and hence dull and boring. And we are given no choice about these things. Let's talk about an engineer by default. I have a master's degree in chemical engineering, and yet I have not worked a day in my life as an engineer. And the sad part is that the 7 years I spent studying engineering were the most boring part of my life. So why did I do it? I completed my high school in India in 1962. In those days, if you had good grades in high school, you were only supposed to do one of two things: study medicine or study engineering. The only thing I knew was that I did not want to become a medical doctor because I did not like the smell of hospitals. The atmosphere in hospitals was always dull, sad, and depressing. I had no desire to spend my entire life in that atmosphere. So, by default, I studied engineering. I wish people had guided me to something more to my liking, but that would have gone against conventional wisdom. Through a competitive entrance examination, I got into the Indian Institute of Technology, that is IIT. There were 5 IITs in India at the time, and they had a joint entrance exam. The IITs are world class universities, amongst the best in the world. Microsoft hires engineers from all around the world. A few years ago, Bill Gates was asked if he had one place to pick engineers from, which university he would choose. His quick answer was IITs. Once you pass the entrance exam, you are called for an oh, you are called for an oral interview, and at that point the board of interviewers lets you choose the location of your study and the major subject. At the time I went for the interview, my parents were in New Delhi. So when the interviewers asked me which IIT I wanted to join, I just said Bombay, now called Mumbai. Then they asked me what I wanted to study. I had no idea, so I asked them what IIT Bombay was really good at. They said IIT Bombay specialized in chemical engineering. So I ended up studying chemical engineering. Is that the way to choose what you study? Since I had no interest in studying engineering, during my 5 years at IIT, I would read about everything except engineering. I could pass all the exams, but I had no interest in it and did not know what I was doing there. I was really glad when I graduated from IIT. But my misery did not end. Upon graduation from IIT, I wanted to go to the USA for higher studies. However, I needed financial assistance to be able to continue in graduate school in USA. And at least back in the 1960s, the only way to get financial aid for me was to study some more chemical engineering. And that is exactly what I did for 2 more years in the USA. I ended up wasting my time and someone else's money studying something useless. At that all that is ancient history now, and personally I have forgotten everything a long time ago. But when I look back at it, I always wonder if it would not have been better for someone else who really wanted to study engineering to have taken my place. We both would have been happier, and all that money spent on me would have produced a real engineer. So, does our structured educational system help anyone? Let's talk about preschool madness, or is it greed? In some countries, such as India, our modern system of education has deteriorated to really ridiculous levels. How ridiculous! A number of schools require an entrance test for preschool kids. Ugh, are you going to educate this child? Or is he supposed to already know these things before you start teaching him? Maybe we expect children to be born with this knowledge? Or is it just a way for the schools to make money? With a large enough donation, your child can get in anyway, even if he fails the entrance test. During my visit to New Delhi in September 2006, I was thrilled to read in the newspaper that the High Court had just issued a ruling barring entrance interviews or tests for students just entering schools and for preschool kids. Maybe the shift has already started. Let's talk about school regimen. Once the children get into school, they all have to study according to a fixed curriculum, which usually bears little resemblance to life in the real world, and each child is expected to grow and proceed at exactly the pace that the teacher determines. Mostly, schools do not teach or concern themselves with discipline these days. Their attitude seems to be that it is not something that they are responsible for. We do not allow for the child's interest or individuality, and the focus is entirely on academic learning, not on real life issues. We can go on and on about the problems with our current educational system, but it may be better to talk about the good things in the new world. Our current educational system needs to be revamped completely, and that is exactly what will happen in the new world. Let's talk about learning in the new world. The most significant change in the new world will be that learning and education will not be standardized, but totally individualized. There will be no fixed classes and no predefined curriculum that people need to follow. There will be no examinations, no question of pass or fail, no top of the class, and no graduation. If a person has difficulty in learning something, he will not be punished in the sense of failing and repeating a class. Instead, he will be helped by others till he really learns and understands the subject. Since he is studying it by choice anyway, his only interest is in learning and not in just obtaining a passing grade. He will put in the effort required to really understand the subject. There will be no academic degrees, and a person's academic qualifications will not determine his status in society. There will be many class offerings on diverse topics at many locations, but each individual can choose which ones, if any, to take and in which order. Learning and education in the new world are for the primary purposes of making you happy in life. Learning is a fun activity done by choice. Let's talk about holistic learning. In keeping with the integrated body as a single body, mind, spirit combination, each one of us will also select the type of learning we go through. unlike the current situation in which the emphasis is purely on intellectual learning. Education in the new world will also include spiritual learning. Let's talk about learning for children. Young children will probably be the only ones that will have supervised learning for the first few years of their lives. For children's education, the emphasis will be on teaching them how to be good citizens, how to behave with each other, and how to always be polite with both adults and children. Bad behavior is emotional violence, and violence in any form is not acceptable in the new world. Children being children, they will probably behave badly from time to time. When a child behaves badly in the new world, he is not reprimanded or punished for his actions. Also, he is not just told how to behave. Instead, the consequences of his bad behavior are explained to him, and he is also guided by the teacher to understand how he could have handled the situation differently. In today's world, parents, teachers, and others normally tell the children what not to do much more than telling them what to do. Also, we punish the child for doing something wrong without explaining to the child why it was wrong. The child then gets really confused in terms of how he or she is supposed to behave. Bad behavior is never punished in the new world. Instead, good behavior is rewarded. Hence, there is a natural tendency for the child's mind to gravitate towards good behavior. The human mind will always pick reward over punishment. What do we teach the children? In the new world, the main things we want to teach the children are real life issues. Very little emphasis will be put on academic learning, and even here, each child is allowed to develop at his own pace. There are no tests and definitely no competitions and no comparisons with other children. Competition exists in the third dimension. Cooperation and mutual support exist in the new world in the fourth dimension. Children will be taught about their own human bodies. Their body is nothing to be ashamed of. They will be taught how to take care of themselves and why it is important. At the same time, there will be enough emphasis on taking care of their emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies along with their physical bodies. That means just having a beautiful and sexy body will not automatically make you a nice person. You also need to make sure that your behavior is not grouchy. Inner beauty is as important as outer beauty. Food habits are also explained to the children with the types of healthy foods that they will eat in the new world. There will be no concept of food making a person sick as it does in the old world, where arteries get blocked by saturated fats. This is related to the fact that in the old world, the primary aim of the food manufacturing and processing industry is to preserve food as long as possible. In the new world, the primary consideration is to have fresh food that preserves the life force in the food and is really good for health. Children will also be taught about their relationships with plants and animals, since they will be able to communicate telepathically with the animals. They will never abuse animals. They will realize the oneness of life and feel the pain of the plants or the animals. Children of the new world will never understand how in the old world it was a sport to kill animals. Children will be provided all kinds of activities like painting, drawing, music, gymnastics, swimming, and non competitive sports. Each child can pick the area of his interest and spend time on it. There are no games, even video games, with violence in them. Whatever the child wants to study will be okay with the parents and the teachers. They will all realize that the child will naturally gravitate towards the activities of his interest and thereby will do very well in studies and be happy with it. That is why there will never be any pressure on the child to spend time on or study the things he doesn't like to. There are no professionals by default in the new world. Let's talk about places of learning in the new world. In each community, there will be major places of learning connected to other similar places throughout the world that have like libraries full of information about all topics. Every person will have full access to these facilities. Then then there are other places that will have many types of laboratories for different experiments that one may want to perform. At these centers of learning, there will also be many classrooms of different sizes. However, there will be no fixed schedules of classes. Different persons who want to teach different classes can easily reserve these classrooms and announce the classes on the net. All interested persons can attend the classes of their choice. The other side of it is that if a person wants to take some classes that are not being currently offered, then he will be able to put a request out on the net for a teacher. Whoever is qualified and interested in teaching that class can then arrange one and announce it. Or if somebody in another geographical location is holding a similar class, they can arrange a video link and the interested student will attend the class no matter where he is geographically. The entire world becomes a one giant global classroom. Let's talk about model of education in the current world. In the current formal educational system, young people generally study for the first couple of decades of their lives and then work the rest of their lives. This means the person has to decide first what he wants to study it, and then usually get stuck with the profession simply because that is what he studied. If he studied architecture, for example, then nobody is going to give him a job as a psychologist, even if he finds psychology very interesting. There may be some education during the working life, but more often than not, it is connected very specifically to the company, organization, or system that the person is working with. We are being forced to choose a profession without any real experience of what that profession is like. That is how our society makes engineers by default. Let's talk about model of education in the new world. There will be no such thing as defined formal education in the new world, and education will not be limited to young people either. You will never have to choose a path of formal education, and there will be no degrees that you have to get. There will be no required courses, and there is no question of failing an exam since there will be no exams. As soon as a child is old enough to get out of supervised learning situations, let us say about 8 to 10 years of age, the child will start working at different types of jobs part time. He may take any job that is of interest to him. Then he can start learning more and more about that job, both from other people working in the field as well as from classes that he chooses to attend. If he doesn't find that kind of job interesting after trying it for a while, he is free to switch to another kind of job. Switching jobs will be easy since there will be no considerations of salary cuts, seniority, losing benefits, pensions, etc. A job will never tie anyone down. When the person takes a new job, he will be doing it with the knowledge that this seems to be more to his liking than the old job. And even before he takes the new job, he may start taking classes in the new area that he wants to get into. Education then will become an integral part of life and a lifelong learning process, always undertaken by choice, and no one profession will be considered better than any other. And no one profession will be considered better than any other. Everyone is considered equal, just each one serving us in different ways. Education is a lifelong experience meant to make life more interesting and fun. Let's talk about higher education in the new world. Although almost any kind of learning will be available to almost anyone, there will be some specialized areas where technology transfers from other higher level civilizations will be needed. This may actually require some people to do interplanetary travel for training that they can then impart the learning to others on planet Earth. Examples of these types of training may be for the following. First one, design and maintenance of spacecrafts for space travel. Second one, design of new materials, advanced nanotechnologies. 3. Advanced mind healing techniques. For example, the regeneration of amputated limbs or the revival of failed body organs. 4. Techniques to change or repair DNA. 5. Use of mind power to repair damaged physical brain. 6. Instruments to measure subtle energies like emotions. 7. Amalgamation of organic and non organic matter to create smart appliances. Let's talk about, is this not a formula for disaster? By now, most of you, and especially the ones with advanced degrees, are probably shaking your heads, convinced that we are heading towards a disaster by eliminating the formal educational systems and especially the system of examinations and degrees. Let us look at it dispassionately and see if that is really true, or have we just been taught that and have accepted the mass thinking. Does a degree really make a person smart? Bill Gates doesn't even have a college degree, and yet he has thousands of PhDs working for him. Are those PhDs smarter than Bill Gates? Or should we consider Bill Gates not too smart? Whenever a person really learns based on his own interest, he always learns well. Let's talk about a disappointed professor or teacher. In the early 1970s, for a couple of years, I personally taught university level courses in the USA on a part time basis. I taught a variety of subjects including mathematics, accounting, computer programming, and business administration. I found that the great majority of students were in class just because they needed the class to graduate, and because someone else, either the parents or the government, was paying for it. They had no interest in learning what I was teaching. Their only concern was to somehow complete that class and get a passing grade. It was very discouraging for me to see such apathy amongst the students. Then I decided that I would never teach again. For 30 years after that, I stayed completely away from teaching. Let's talk about a model for the new world. And then I started teaching hypnotherapy, regression therapy, energy healing, crystal therapy, etc., to the general public with a wide variety of backgrounds, no prerequisite. Now I teach on 4 different continents, have thousands of students in many countries, and the students have all different backgrounds. Their backgrounds include medical doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, engineers, biologists, social scientists, computer programmers, pharmacologists, dentists, housewives, lawyers, cartoonists, journalists, TV news reporters, dancers, musicians, business executives, the list goes on. Almost any profession you can think of is included in my student body. And I love every minute of that teaching and will probably do it for the rest of my life. Every student is coming of his own interest and choice and paying his own money and is genuinely interested in learning. Without exception, every one of them is learning very well. This is the model of learning in the new world and it is effective. This is the end of this chapter. Thank you.